In 1845, a pair of the most cutting-edge ships of their era, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, set sail into the formidable Arctic. Their mission, to finally chart the elusive Northwest Passage, a fabled shortcut through the top of the world. With a crew of 129 men and enough provisions to last a staggering 3 years, this wasn't just another voyage, it was the pinnacle of British naval ambition and exploration. These weren't just any ships, they were paragons of Victorian engineering. They were last sighted by European whalers in Baffin Bay in July of that year, brimming with confidence and hope, and then they simply vanished. For decades, the only whispers of what happened to these 129 souls came from hushed Inuit accounts of desperation, and chillingly, a single note discovered in a stone cairn detailing death and abandonment. We're going to break down what really happened in those final, horrifying moments of the Lost Franklin expedition. The dream, the British Empire at the height of its power, was absolutely captivated by the idea of the Northwest Passage. Imagine finding a maritime shortcut through the Arctic, shaving thousands of miles off the journey to Asia and planting the Union Jack on every icy outcrop along the way. It was a strategic and economic dream. Who better to lead such a monumental undertaking than Sir John Franklin? At 59 years old, he was a seasoned Navy man, a veteran of polar expeditions, and, let's be honest, he was also pretty famous for getting into sticky situations on previous trips. But the Admiralty, pushing for this prestigious discovery, handed him the magnificent HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. These weren't just any vessels, they were bomb-proof wooden warships, already proven tough in the Antarctic ice. They spared no expense. They bolted on a steam engine to Erebus, a marvel of industrial technology for its time, and reinforced the hulls with iron plating. The ships were loaded with an astonishing 2,500 tins of soup, 5,000 books, a 3,000 volume library, and even a pet monkey to keep spirits high. Confidence was sky high back home. Newspapers gushed, calling it the best provisioned expedition in history. What could possibly go wrong, right? This wasn't just exploration, it was a grand statement of British might, technology, and sheer will against nature. They believed they had thought of everything. First winter. By September 1845, the expedition had indeed made significant progress, but then they encountered the inevitable. They became locked in the unforgiving pack ice northwest of King William Island. Instead of succumbing to panic, which many might expect, the crew settled in for the long dark winter. They maintained morale with hunting parties, theatrical plays staged on the ice, and a sense of shared purpose. Things seemed, at least outwardly, to be going rather well. They even carved a message on a copper sheet, tucked it into a stone cairn, essentially saying, "All good, see you next summer." Summer 1846 eventually arrived, bringing with it a brief thaw. The ice loosened its grip, and the ships managed to push further south. But this was a cruel trick of the Arctic. They sailed straight into a choke point, a treacherous area of ice that would never truly open again. The ships froze in for a second brutal winter. Still, no major alarms were sounding among the crew. The canned food, while perhaps tasting a bit metallic, was being consumed, but nobody connected the dots yet. The initial optimism, a hallmark of Victorian exploration, hadn't yet fully eroded, but the subtle seeds of disaster were already being sown. The dominoes start to fall. Here's where the story takes a grim turn, and the grand plans of the British Empire began to unravel. The state-of-the-art tinned food meant to sustain them became a silent killer. The lead solder used to seal those cans was constantly leaching into the stew, the vegetables and the meat. Day by day, the crew was unknowingly dosing themselves with a neurotoxin. Lead poisoning causes a terrifying array of symptoms, dulling judgment, causing extreme weakness, wrecking kidneys, and leading to debilitating pain and bleeding gums. Imagine trying to navigate complex decisions or perform strenuous tasks while suffering from such severe internal distress. The lead levels found in the remains of crew members were alarmingly high, sometimes 20 times higher than normal, indicating acute poisoning. For instance, John Torrington, a stoker, had lead concentrations up to 226 parts per million in his bones, vastly exceeding normal levels. But that wasn't all. Scurvy, the ancient scourge of sailors, crept in insidiously. The lime juice, intended as an anti-scorbutic, had lost its vitamin C long ago due to poor preservation and storage. Scurvy leads to profound fatigue, spongy, bleeding gums, loose teeth, and old wounds reopening. It makes you weak, prone to bruising, and can even cause delusions and depression. Add to this the rampant infectious diseases, tuberculosis, which was a major cause of death in the 19th century and would have spread rapidly in the close quarters of the ships, and pneumonia. Some evidence even points to botulism from a bad batch of canned kidneys. It was a perfect storm of medical disasters. Suddenly, half the crew was coughing blood, too weak to stand, or mentally incapacitated. In April 1848, the unimaginable had happened. 20 officers and men were already dead, including Sir John Franklin himself. The remaining survivors, now under the command of Captain Crozier, scribbled a new, desperate note. It read, "Ships deserted, 105 souls, under command of Captain Crozier, start tomorrow for Back River." They folded it, crammed it back into the same cairn, and marched into an icy, desolate nowhere. This decision to abandon the ships, despite having food, was likely driven by the severe illness and weakness plaguing the men. The Death March. The march was nothing short of a living nightmare. Imagine dragging heavy whaleboats laden with what they considered essential supplies, silverware, Bibles, and even chocolate, across treacherous gravel and snow. They were covering perhaps 5 miles a day, if they were lucky. Their fingers, exposed to the biting cold, blackened from frostbite, shoulders dislocated under the crushing weight of their burdens. As their strength waned, they began to discard precious items, first the silver plates, then medical cabinets, and finally, it seems, all hope. Inuit hunters later recounted haunting tales of gaunt, desperate men falling on their faces in the snow. One small group, clinging to a sliver of hope, managed to reach the southern shore of King William Island and tried to construct a makeshift driftwood raft. But the merciless currents of the Arctic spun them in helpless circles. Starvation gnawed at them. They ate raw seal meat, then they gnawed on their leather boots, and in the final, horrific stages, they resorted to cannibalism. Forensic teams in the 1990s, examining bones recovered from the region, found undeniable evidence: defleshing cut marks and skulls, cracked open from the inside, clear signs of this ultimate desperation. The last man likely died wondering why the very food meant to save him had killed him quicker than starvation. The search industry back home, the disappearance sparked a national obsession. Lady Jane Franklin, Sir John's indomitable wife, refused to accept defeat. She personally bankrolled 7 different rescue missions, turning her husband into a national martyr and a symbol of British heroism. Literary giants like Charles Dickens penned melodramatic articles, fueling public fascination and grief. The Royal Navy, spurred by public outcry and national pride, even offered a colossal reward of £20,000, equivalent to millions today, for any news of the expedition. In 1850, searchers finally found the graves of 3 crewmen on Beechey Island. These bodies, including that of John Torrington, were perfectly preserved in the permafrost, their faces still eerily capped by frost. It was a chilling first clue. 9 years later, in 1859, another team located the Victory Point note, the same one left by Crozier, which became the only official document ever recovered. For 150 years, that scrap of paper was the closest thing to an eyewitness account of the tragedy. Meanwhile, Inuit stories of a dead white camp and encounters with starving men were largely dismissed by Victorian society as mere savage rumours, often due to prevailing racial prejudices. It wasn't until archaeologists began to meticulously match every detail of these oral histories with physical evidence that the immense value and accuracy of Inuit traditional knowledge finally came to light. finding the ghost ships fast forward to 2014 after decades of renewed searches, often guided by those very Inuit oral histories that had been ignored for so long. A breakthrough finally occurred. A Parks Canada team, acting on an Inuit tip about a wooden island in Queen Maud Gulf, deployed side-scan sonar. What they found was astonishing. A perfect hull sitting upright in 36 feet of water. It was HMS Erebus. The discovery sent shockwaves around the world. Just 2 years later, in 2016, local Inuit hunter Sami Kogvik pointed searchers to Terror Bay. There, resting on the seafloor, was HMS Terror, remarkably well preserved. Its helm was still threaded through its rail, cabin windows intact, and dinner plates stacked as if the officers might return for dessert at any moment. It was a ghost ship, frozen in time. While no human remains were found inside either wreck, hundreds of artifacts have been recovered from Erebus, offering a poignant glimpse into the crew's final days. Scientific instruments, silk slippers, a sealed medical bottle still full of morphine. These objects tell a silent story of a crew that left in haste and never came back. The wrecks are now jointly managed by Parks Canada and the Inuit Heritage Trust, a fitting recognition of the critical role Inuit knowledge played in solving this enduring mystery. What killed them, really? So, with all this information, what truly killed them? Modern forensic work on the bodies exhumed from Beechy Island, such as John Torrington, showed lead levels 3 times the toxic threshold. This wasn't just a contributing factor, it was a devastating assault on their physical and mental well-being. Imagine the cumulative effect. Chronic lead poisoning causing neurological symptoms like confusion and poor decision-making, alongside physical weakness. Add to this a crippling zinc deficiency, the relentless advance of scurvy and tuberculosis-driven adrenal collapse, which would have led to severe dehydration and wasting even if food was available. Picture a sailor too weak to stand, too confused to hunt or navigate, and too cold to sleep, his body slowly disintegrating from within. Multiply that terrifying scenario by 129 men. The ships were never crushed, a popular theory for years. They simply froze in place, becoming inescapable prisons until the crew, in their weakened state, walked away, unable to free them. Inuit testimony even suggests the last living sailor may have been shot trying to steal seal meat, a tragic final act that, by that point, might have been a grim mercy. Ultimately, the most technologically advanced polar expedition of its era vanished due to a tragic confluence of factors. Bad cans, bad luck, and perhaps bad assumptions about the sheer, unforgiving power of the Arctic. The wrecks have been found, the bones have spoken their silent truths, and the artifacts recovered whisper tales of their last moments. Yet, the story still claws at us. 129 people who followed orders straight into an ice maze and never found the exit. It's a stark reminder of human ambition clashing with the brutal realities of nature. If you want to dive deeper into this incredible saga, I've left a list of books and podcasts in the description below. Smash that like button if you learned something grim today, subscribe for more forgotten disasters, and comment below. Would you rather face lead poisoning or polar bears? Stay curious, stay kind, and for goodness sake, don't trust 3-year-old canned mutton.